Welcome back to Your Passion, Purpose, and Personal Brand. I'm Lisa McGuire, Strategic Identity Advisor and creator of Category of Only. Before we begin today, I want to give you a little context on where we're going in the conversation. Over the past several months, we've been exploring something I call identity evolution. It's the moment when the life, work, role, or reputation that helped create your success still functions, but it no longer feels large enough to hold who you have become. Most people initially try to address that with a moment of strategy. They look for better messaging or a clearer offer. They want a new website, maybe a new marketing plan, a different networking room, and sometimes those things are necessary. But they cannot resolve a problem that begins at the level of identity. There comes a point when I can explain this idea only in so many ways. Eventually, people need to hear what it looks like and feels like inside of a real life. And that is what this next series of conversations is about. These are not traditional client testimonials. We are not here to manufacture a dramatic before and after story or tell you someone's entire life changed in 3 simple steps. We're going to go back to honest moments. The season where everything still looked functional from the outside, but something had begun to feel untrue on the inside. And the signs are very easy to dismiss. The patterns are difficult to see while someone is living inside of them. And the relief that becomes possible when someone finally recognizes the deeper thread that has been there all along, my hope is that you do not only hear my guest's story today, I hope you hear something that helps you recognize your own. So my guest today is Sarah-Anne Wildgoose, founder of Saw Design Studio. Sarah-Anne is part of my close professional network, and I have partnered with her on several projects. That matters to the story because I knew what she could do. I knew the history and experience behind her work. I had seen the intelligence, the care, the emotional discernment, the visual judgment, and the strategic thinking she brought into the projects she touched. But I also knew much of that depth was not coming through in her networking conversations or in her marketing. People could see the deliverables, they could see the design, they could see the finished visual assets, but they could not necessarily see everything Sarah-Anne was seeing, interpreting, and understanding before she ever began creating them. As the marketplace began changing around her, that gap became increasingly difficult to ignore. And this is a conversation about what happens when your work still has value, but the way people understand it has become too small. So Sarah-Anne, with that setup, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Lisa. I'm very excited to be here today. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And I think this is going to be fascinating to so many people because your story is not unlike so many others. I know you well enough that this will probably feel less like an interview and more like a conversation that we have had many times before.
Right.
But today, I want to slow it down enough for someone listening to recognize the moments that we might ordinarily move past. So let's begin before either one of us knew that this was a conversation we needed to have. So I'm going to take us back to a period after you moved to Atlanta and relaunched your business. And I remember we sat for breakfast one day over at this very nice breakfast restaurant. We had coffee, right? And what you had just moved here, relaunched your business. Tell me what was working during that season.
Wow, that was at the very, very beginning. And I think, so there had been a block of time between my business in Rhode Island and down here. And of course, the marketplace had changed. Also, I moved to Atlanta without knowing, I knew one person. That was it, just one person. So I knew that networking had to be in play. And I believe the reason that we connected was because we were networking within the same group and you came highly recommended. And of course, we can work well together. So I think I was really energized at that time because everything was new. And
Mm.
I was making connections. I was finding work. I got some motion going. And I think that probably lasted for about 3 years. So halfway
Mhm.
through. I've been here 6 years. So halfway through. Um, Things were going really, really well.
So at that time, Sarah-Anne, what were your clients hiring you to create? What type of things?
Yeah. So a lot of them were startups. So we started with logos and business cards. Sometimes they needed a postcard to go with it as a promotional item or an infographic. I was
Mhm.
doing pitch decks. Um, so it was a variety of work. I was doing a little bit of social media here and there for other
Mhm.
people. A lot of my time, though, was spent building relationships up, right? Because if you don't have the relationship, you don't have the trust, then the referrals aren't going to happen.
Yeah. So what role did networking play? Like, how often were you making networking a part of your week?
That's a really good question. I was the networking queen, is what I was calling
Mhm.
myself. And a lot of it was just, I need to see this group. Who's in the room? What are they
Mhm.
talking about? Is this going to be beneficial for me putting my time in there?
Mhm.
And I had narrowed it down to probably three different groups. Some of them were, 4 times a month. Others were once a month. Some of them were twice a month. So it was quite the variety, and that pace seemed to work really well.
All right. So what I hear you saying is you got here and you were able to establish yourself. It was not without work, right?
Yeah.
And you were the networking queen. If I ever wanted to know what was going on, I would say, Sarah-Anne, where are you going, right?
Right,
But
right,
I think the fact that that you were able to find success, that distinction is important because you may have, when you got here, felt like you were beginning from zero, but you weren't. You had experience that you brought with you when you moved. You were able to develop these relationships. You were able to find clients. You had proof that you could rebuild and create momentum.
right.
And from the outside, there is no obvious reason to say something is wrong. And that's one of the reasons why I call being successfully stuck is so hard to recognize because it looks like everything is going well. Nothing has necessarily collapsed.
Right.
The outside evidence says business works, but something inside the relationship you have with this work starts to change. So, when did you notice, Sarah-Anne, that things first began to change?
Well, I'm not sure I noticed,
Mm-hmm.
kind of in the way that someone hands you a letter and therefore you notice, right?
Mm-hmm.
It really was frustration began to happen. The passion
Mm-hmm.
that you have for your business is not as strong as it was. And I think the point you're leading up to is we were in a networking group and I was asking a series of questions because I felt as if I still had the meetings, I still had the referrals, but the conversations were very different.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, a lot of what I was hearing was the word Canva.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people saying, well, I just do it in AI because Canva is a form of AI. Or they were using some other services like Fiverr. And, when you're used to doing design from scratch and unique and fresh to your client and very intentional, I think the automation aspect caused frustration for me. But
Mm-hmm.
I want to compliment you because being the expert that you are, I wasn't I was living the frustration,
Yeah.
I wasn't seeing the frustration. I just felt there was a communication gap, but I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't sure why that had happened. So when you were asking me things and invited me to talk with you, and we went through the whole process, that's when the revelations started to happen.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask you to pause there. I want to slow down a little bit before we get to that conversation, because I want to go back to something that you just said, that you started as people were giving you alternatives on maybe why they would not need your service. You started having this emerging frustration. So tell me a little bit about during that time when someone would throw out, "Oh, I just use this service or this particular solution." What was happening with your energy?
Oh, well, when you're not met with positivity
Yes.
and it happens repeatedly,
Mm-hmm.
obviously you're not as energetic as you were, because to me, there's a gap in the conversation because we're now in a new space, just time wise, and
Mm-hmm.
tools are coming in that never existed before.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it just took some time to live through those struggles to actually then say, I've got to do something about
Mm-hmm.
this. What worked before is not working now.
Right. So, what did you see as far as your networking results? Whereas before you were able to find clients, did you notice a change all of a sudden, or was it something that happened gradually?
Oh, no, I think it happened gradually.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's very similar to ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
When it first arrived, of course, you had people jump right on it. Then you had other people put their toes in it. Then you have other people who right now maybe aren't touching it. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
it took a little bit of time to let Canva be introduced and some of the other ones for me to have to realize, okay, this is here. It's going to stay. So what next? But I think that was the question. What
Mm-hmm.
next?
Mm-hmm. And I'd be very curious to know, what were you saying to yourself privately during that season? Not when you're out networking, not when you're
Right.
out, having your conversations, but you in your office sitting there, you get off the call. What are you saying to yourself privately during that time?
I think it boils down to one word. What?
Mm,
What is going on?
mm-hmm,
Because not that anything is normal, but my norm is no longer norm.
mm-hmm,
But I don't think you're too close to the subject matter. You're in it, you're living it. It's hard to be objective and step back and say,
mm-hmm,
oh, I got it. I know what
mm-hmm.
I need to do.
Right, right. And I think what makes this so disorienting is that you were still doing many of the things that had worked before, right? You were showing up, you had this experience, which I do want to mention. Sarah-Anne is not, and I don't want to say this, like, she's not a graphic designer. I'll just start with that. She has so much experience. Sarah-Anne, I don't want to get this wrong, but tell me a little bit about your background and the accomplishments you had before you even got to Atlanta.
Okay, so the short version is I actually started as an industrial designer.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're in the field of designing products, it's very technical, it's very thorough, detailed, and of course, you're designing for manufacturing. Anybody can draw a pretty picture, but if you can't injection mold it or if it can't be made out of metal, then whatever you did is worthless. And,
Mm-hmm.
people didn't hire me to produce results that weren't going to move forward into production. So when I was working for Johnson and Johnson, I worked on surgical instrumentation. So I have 2 patents regarding the tools that I designed there. I also worked for Tupperware and had some products out on their market. And going way back, I actually had 2 Tonka toys on the shelves for decades. And that was just super rewarding because I did that work as a student. So it was really some nuggets to put in your portfolio and graduate and say, hey, I have done the whole process and I have products out there to prove it. But through my career and journeys and experiences I had, when I stepped away from Tupperware, I decided I needed to work for myself. The dependability, the structure of what I thought corporate was going to offer, it wasn't really there. So that's when I started my first business in Rhode Island. Did that for about 15 years. And through the course of that, I had done some product work for Schick and Georgia Pacific before I pivoted into graphic design, which at that time, that's kind of what I was calling myself, was a graphic designer. But then my next experience was actually working internally for a company that had 5 different divisions. There was no marketing, there was no branding, there was no design. And so that's where I really honed my skills, because I was wearing all those hats and then doing all the designs for their assets. All of this happened while I was teaching at the Rhode Island School of Design. So I was balancing, visual design with product design. So as you were saying, I come into the process very methodical, and, even though with product you're thinking about aesthetics, users, and production, you're doing the same when you're doing visual design, because who's your user? Who's the ICP? Mm-hmm. You got to make sure you connect and entice them. And then, of course, it's visually got to be pleasing to engage. And then, is it digital or print? What are we doing production wise? So.
Yeah. So, listeners, you can see there's much more depth here. And Sarah-Anne, I want to just kind of go back when you say anybody can make a pretty picture. I just want to say, no, not anybody can. All right. So we're going to start with that. But, this is the thing. As you were out there, you were showing up, you had the experience, an extensive experience with it. You were in relationships. You were not suddenly less capable, right?
Yeah.
But this same effort was no longer creating the same response you had that can make you question everything. Like you're looking, is it the room? Is it the message? Is it the economy? Is it the service? Is it this piece of software that everybody thinks is, great and better than sliced bread? Is it your confidence? And so at the time, what did you believe the problem was?
Well, I thought it was a communication gap, that people just weren't understanding the benefits between doing it with AI and hiring someone like myself. Mm-hmm. But the problem is I thought I knew how to speak to that and how to address that. Mm-hmm. But obviously I didn't, because I was becoming frustrated, and a little disheartened.
Right. And people can pick up on that, right? Whether you, as much as you may say the same words and you may smile and nod your head during these conversations, I think what happens is our energy communicates something before you even had language for it. You weren't just simply resisting a task. It was something in you no longer wanted to keep performing the work with that same identity, using the same explanation in the same way, but you didn't know that yet, right? At that point, you didn't know.
Right. I couldn't as much as I tried to solve things on my own, you're too close to it. You're on top of it. You're living it. You're not being objective. And actually, we can see ourselves, but we can't see ourselves like others see us. Yeah. And so that's why when you gave me the invitation to talk to you, it was like, yes, I need someone who knows me to really shake things up for me and help me see what I need to do differently.
Right. And so I think, again, in these conversations, what I hear is the marketplace had started reducing your work to this visible output, right?
Right.
People were seeing the design. They wouldn't consider all of the things, like if you're talking about all of the thought processes and things that go into it.
Right.
When they can push a button over here and get a design, or they could hire you and get a design, they weren't really thinking about that.
Right.
They didn't know the patterns that you recognized, or the meaning that you extracted, or the emotional tone you interpreted.
Right.
So your value had not disappeared, but the way the marketplace was understanding your value had become dangerously narrow. Would that be correct?
Well, yes. And I think really what AI in general has done has minimized value in general. I mean, look at the workplace and look at the layoffs and all of the stuff that's going on. And I think because it's perceived, I can push a button and get a result, doesn't mean it's the right result. But, but because it's new to everyone, not just me, but everyone, you become enamored with something of that nature. And so you continue to do that. And I don't want to jump the gun here, because sort of the next revelation I was going to share is in a minute.
Okay.
I think it, like anything, you have to live in that funk.
Yes.
A little bit. Don't stay too long.
Yeah.
But a little bit, and then seek the authority that can see all sides of you and help you work through what you're feeling.
Right. And I also want to call out that you use the word storyteller to describe part of what you did. So that's another component of this. As you're working with graphics and visuals, you had communicated it in the way where, people would look at you and they're like, I don't just make logos. Like, she helps with storytelling. So when you described yourself as, I believe, a visual storyteller, what did that word originally mean to you?
Well, to me, I mean, if you think about your childhood books, right? Why do we like our childhood books? Because it's all about the visual attraction to tell the story. And yes, Green Eggs and Ham or any of those famous ones. We like the words, but it's really the pictures that to bring it to life. And so I was conveying that, yes, you need content, but if you don't have the visuals to help guide someone through the page, your story is never going to be heard.
Right. And, that's one of the reasons we call them picture books, right?
Yes.
Because children can really be pulled into that. But, I was also calling myself a storyteller, a business storyteller, because at that time I was writing messaging copy. I was writing a website copy. So if you look at, you're a storyteller, I'm a storyteller, and there's thousands of storytellers out there. So all of a sudden, what makes us unique, right?
Right.
We have that. And so that's where a word can remain true, but still make us small. But it could really never carry the depth of what you had become, because like all of this extensive background you had, I think the language became too small. The new human economy is already reshaping how leadership works, and the women who understand it first will be the ones who lead it. Architect Her, created by Dr. Don Barden and me, Lisa McGuire, is a private leadership architecture experience for high-capacity women preparing to lead what comes next. Grounded in Dr. Barden's research, this curated cohort brings together women carrying real scale and responsibility to think, decide, and lead with more clarity and authority. If you're ready to move from achievement into authorship, learn more about Architect Her by clicking the link down below. The next era of leadership is already here. Architected. So, Sarah-Anne, was there a point when the frustration of not being fully understood just became impossible to ignore?
It did. And I actually think it might have been more of an explosion. And maybe that's not even the right word. But I was prepping to go to a networking meeting. And I had opportunity to have the floor at that networking meeting. Now, what led me to the thoughts I had the night before was, okay, I've been living this situation of frustration for a while now, probably a month, maybe a little longer than a month. But it was kind of like, I can't take this anymore. And I felt I had opportunity. I knew the people in the room well. It was a smaller group. And I felt like, well, maybe what I need to know is maybe I think I'm communicating clearly, but I'm not. So even though I get it, is my audience actually getting it? So I took the meeting and pivoted it. So when it was my floor in the meeting, I had made an announcement that I just really had some simple questions that I was going to ask rather than present, and I needed some good, honest feedback. And that's when it led me to ask the group. I think my first question was probably, can we kind of go around the room, and I would like you to tell me what I do.
Yes. And so I'm going to pick up there because this is the time that I really want to feature. I will never forget that day. I will never forget that day because, Sarah-Anne, I was one of those people in that group. And I knew you, and I had been watching over a series of months this rising frustration. And I don't think it was apparent to everyone. But because I know you so well, this moment in our networking group where you looked at everyone and, lowering any type of mask, just becoming completely vulnerable. The words you said is, what do you think I do? So when you were asking that question, I want to go back to that time when you were asking that question. What were you hoping to hear? What was your point behind that question?
Well, actually, they told me what I wanted to hear. Now, I think the advantage is it's your networking group, unlike seeing a client for the first time. They already know you. Hopefully, they already like and trust you, right?
Right.
So that was an advantage, but because it was consistent throughout the room in what they were sharing, which was confirmation, then I was left to the question of what again? What now?
Right, because you asked that question, and basically what people answered is they parroted back to you what you had been telling us for weeks, right? So you were looking for, is there something I'm missing? Are they hearing something right that I don't know?
Right.
But I remember hearing that question very differently than what I think most people in the room did.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. I didn't hear a woman asking for help polishing her elevator pitch. I heard intense frustration. I heard someone who knew she had decades of experience and real depth, but couldn't understand why that depth was not translating. People knew you, people respected you, people liked working with you, but being known is not the same thing as being understood. And in that moment, it was not a lack of talent or effort or capability. I saw a woman with substantial history trying to fit herself into language that had become too small.
Yeah.
And because I'd worked beside you, I knew there was a significant gap between what I knew was there and what other people were able to perceive. And so this was the moment I knew that we needed to have a different type of conversation.
Right.
So if I can remember correctly, the meeting ended. I was just processing, what did I see here? Like, where is this coming from, right? So I think maybe we were going to meet. It was normally at the end of the year, we get together and kind of have a year-end celebration, right, of working together. Mm-hmm. So we were having our time there, and I reached out to you, and I think we were just chit-chatting. And then I want to talk about like what happened at that dinner where I reached out to you. Like, what were you thinking? Like, what do you remember me saying to you? And what did you think was going to happen?
Well, yeah. So I was excited because obviously the whole goal was insight, and you come with so much knowledge. And I sensed that you perceived something, right? Mm-hmm. So I thought this would be a very valuable conversation interaction because I do need someone to shed new direction on the old me, because storytelling at that point too, as a way to frame what you do for people, visual storytelling, as you said, became overused. And I mean, all different kinds of industries. And I just didn't know where to go with me, with the identity of myself and my studio, that knowing what you do, I felt you're going to run me through something that's going to ask a lot of questions. But hopefully there's a lot of answers in there, and I can get realigned and be passionate again about what I do. Because I'm with you. It's when you have a breadth of work and you are capable of doing full campaigns for people with lots of assets, but yet you don't perceive yourself moving forward. You're unclear. So I was maybe relieved because we were going to have a really good conversation.
Yeah. So we met, and I told you that I was going to be working with people on what I call category of only. Yes. And category of only is the clear, ownable difference that only one person in the world has. And everybody has their own. Each person has their own because you have your own unique set of qualifications and experiences and impact and this golden thread that runs through everything. And like you said, Sarah-Anne, we can't see it ourselves. So we're having this conversation as we're having dinner. And I ask your permission, would you let me do this with you? Yes. Right? And what are you thinking at that point?
Well, again, because I didn't really know what this was. I was uncertain, but comforted. Again, I'm going to repeat myself, but I knew there was going to be outcomes. There was going to be new visions for me, an objective perspective that I can't give myself.
Right. And I also do want to say there was an enormous amount of trust that we have built up in our relationship, right?
Yes.
So this is not somebody coming in and saying, I'm going to take what I see and turn it into something that maybe you weren't comfortable with. You were familiar with my work as well. So this trust that was there, I think, was a very strong foundation of what we were going to do. So where I typically work with people in category of only who I may not have any experience or insight into, and that's more often than not the case. For you, many of the parts of the process, I didn't even need to have a conversation with you because I knew some of the answers already having worked together. So,
Right.
So I went away. I did my thing, right? I did all of my research, and so we met back online. I remember I was actually sitting in the same chair, looking at the same computer monitor, and revealing to you the information of the category of only. So I would love to know, what was your first reaction when you saw this work? And you can be completely transparent. You can tell the good, the bad, the ugly. Like, what was your reaction when you first saw this?
Well, and I need to preface my answer with knowing that you are a process person and very detailed. I knew that this was going to be quite an in-depth, detailed report back into me. However, I was shocked just because there was so much detail in there, things that again, you're too close to it that you don't even think about that aspect of you, right? So it was a great extractment of content about the individual that you're working with, me in this case.
Right.
And with shocking, I would say a bit overwhelming, because you're now looking at yourself like you never have before. So on top of detailed, thorough, and lots of information, when you first engage with, I don't know if we want to call it a report or the details,
sure,
it was a lot to go through. And yeah.
It was a lot. It was a lot. And I remember prefacing it with you like, this is a lot, right?
Yes.
But I remember you, like your first internal reaction, you told me, I think it might have been later, because I could see, I told you it was going to be a lot. I delivered a lot. And I told you to read it in waves, right? Like read it in phases, because there was so much. But I remember you came back and told me that you asked a question of, have I been doing everything wrong? So I would love to know if do you recall that?
I don't recall that I said that statement, but again, when you were in that moment and you're looking at all that information, it just hits your reactions, right?
It does. It does. And it's almost like an internal, she saw all of this in me, like, where did this come from? And Sarah-Anne, was there anything in there that was inaccurate? I mean, did I hit the nail on the head with it?
Oh no, you hit the nail on the head with it. And I think because, again, it's an outsider, although you're not an outsider, but someone looking at you very differently and giving you feedback that you've never had like that, or in depth, that I think you have a moment of self-reflection and you go, well, why didn't I see that? And then I think for me, because sometimes it'll restate information which affirms that it's spot on, that you're like, I was just too close to this subject matter that I never thought about speaking to those points of things I've done my entire career that we make assumptions that people understand where your efforts are going. And because you are in the discipline and they are not, they don't know what you did behind the scenes. So it was eye-opening that I was shortchanging myself.
Yeah. And I think that reaction is so important because people assume that clarity is going to feel instantly empowering, right? So, I've got the answer. Now I could be bigger and I could be stronger and all of that. And sometimes it does, but sometimes that first feeling is exposure. You are seeing the distance between the depth that always been there and this little explanation you had been using, right?
Right.
And for a moment, that distance can look like evidence that maybe you have failed on. It could feel like, how did I not see this? Like you were saying, or why have I been saying it this way? Right.
There's so much more to it. And you've been leaving all of that on the table.
Yeah. And you just simply been too close to your own life and career to recognize that through line. So I would like to know what happened when you stepped away from all that material, because I gave you a lot.
Yes.
I said, look at it in phases, because just even presenting it is overwhelming. And I know it took well over an hour to go through just high level of the report, right?
Right.
So what happened when you stepped away from the material and came back to it then to look at it with a fresh set of eyes?
Yeah, I think I let it sit for 2 days because I just felt like, yes, I need to go and I need to look at that. But I think I just need to pause here and just absorb what I remember when we went through everything. Yeah. And I think something else, I think you shared, like, don't dive into this right now. And, it was several different documents. So I think I went through one at a time, like go through that, read it, and that's good. And then honestly, after I took a little bit of time, and you had said this, don't react on it right away. You need to live with it, go through it before you do anything. And so that's what I did.
Yeah. So when you started putting some of this information into practice, I would be very curious about you physically, because physically before, the frustration, right, shows up in your nervous system. So when this work began to land, when you started using this new approach, how did your body feel? Like physically, what was the difference?
So while I'm implementing?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, when you're out networking and you're sharing with people, what I really loved was, instead of the visual storyteller, now I'm the visual translator. I got the exact reaction that I wanted. People cocked their head and looked at me like, what? And that was perfect, because then you get to unveil the next 2 sentences, and then you've actually enlightened someone, as well as making them think about what you do in a totally different light. So it was very rewarding.
Yeah. And this is what I mean when I say your category of only is not something you create. It's something that becomes visible when your experience, your perspective, your discernment, your natural ability and contribution are finally understood as one coherent body of work.
Yes.
So after this, Sarah-Anne, what did you finally give yourself permission to claim about the work that you do?
Well, let's see. I don't know that there's one. So ask me that again.
All right. So you were not merely arranging visual elements. You were interpreting meaning. you were helping a business communicate how it wanted to be experienced. So my question is, before you were telling people about, I'm a visual storyteller, but now when you have this category of only defined as a visual translator, what is it that you were able to own that you previously did not?
So it was really emotions. If I had to sum it up to one word, it was emotions. And I knew that that's what I was evoking in my work all these years, but I never spoke to it. But when you share with people that business decisions are emotional, we all shake our heads. Yeah, they are. So then if you think that through, if the visual assets, the marketing tools, are not evoking emotional connections, then they're not doing their job. So for me, that was a real aha moment that whether it's color or font or the actual layout or the pattern of a book that helps people build up the comfort level because they kind of know what's going to be on the next page, helping them process and want to engage with materials. It was like, wow. Yeah.
That's right. So it wasn't that long ago, you told me about a recent conversation where you spoke to someone at a networking event about this emotional aspect of design. Take us into that conversation. What did you say to them, and how did the other person respond?
Well, I think it was very similar to what I just did, because oftentimes when I greet people, instead of saying, well, what do you do? Right? Or they go first and then you go second, I would say, well, wait a minute. I would say, can you tell me how many emotional decisions have you made today? And, their eyes lit up like, well, how many have I not made today? Which again is the door opener for me, because, and then I'm going to connect with them right after that saying, well, I know we all have marketing tools, and depending on how they're created or who's actually creating them, what's missing from the success from revenue generating tools is that they're not connecting. There's no emotional connection happening with those pieces. And you're missing clients at hello because they look at something and go, oi, and then they shut down.
Yeah. And I think this is really evidence of the identity change, because you're entering conversations from a different understanding of yourself.
Yeah.
You're not introducing the work from the most easily comparable part of it.
Right.
And the differentiation doesn't come from trying to sound different. It comes from being more willing to say what's actually true.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think the second part of that, with AI, everything is automated. We talked about it before. You push the button and bingo, you get what you want. So I'm able to share that, yeah, it's automatic, but what is it missing? And so, yeah, brainstorming, perfect avenue to see what we can get, enrich the conversation. But as the visual translator, I'll take that foundation and elevate it so it evokes emotion.
So this is a great segue into giving you an opportunity to talk about how you describe SAW Design Studio from this fuller understanding. So when someone asks you, SAW Design Studio, what do you want them to understand about how you might be different than someone else who can work on visuals?
Well, I've pretty much said that so far, but essentially, we all need marketing tools. We all need to make revenue, but design is an investment. And when it's done right, with evoking emotions, putting in the visual triggers to engage, to attract, to connect, then they're actually doing their job. There's a big difference between putting a pitch deck in front of someone versus a pitch deck that's got the human aspect plugged into all of the design elements.
Right.
And also, I would just add that my designs are unique. They're not stock.
Right. Right. They are all custom. And the thing I really appreciate about this is when we're working with a client, whether it's a project we're working on or you're working with one of your clients, there's a lot of money sitting on the table that is available to people if they can get that potential client to make a decision. And when your clients are presenting their materials to someone they want to close a deal on, people don't make decisions just based on fact. It is the emotion that closes the deal.
What is the gut telling you, right? What
Exactly.
is that gut instinct when you are looking at something?
Yeah. It really is. It really is. And so being able to tie in that your ability to discern and translate what is that emotion that you want to elicit from the viewer, that's not something you can get by pushing a button with AI. That AI doesn't know what it is that you're trying to get people to feel or experience. So I think that truly is a differentiator for you, Sarah-Anne.
Well, and I think the other aspects too. So obviously you can load your ICP, your ideal customer profile, into AI. We also know that AI is not perfect, right? But because I work with so many different businesses, I know industries, I know what some of the normal aspects within industries are. So one of the first places I will start with people is, well, let's look at your ICP. What I'm finding at times is the ICP was generated over a year ago. Well, there's a whole lot that has happened between now and then. People are introducing new technologies, or you've pivoted your business a little bit because of technology. So your ICP could be off the mark. Well, if your ICP is off the mark, then perhaps the tools are not actually getting in front of the correct ICP. So before I even do design, we have to do a little bit of discovery, because the foundation is really that ideal client. What are their behaviors? Where are they spending time? What's the age group? All of that good stuff. One of my favorite questions to ask is, why do fast food restaurants use red as their primary color?
I know. It's to get people in and out of there quickly, because that red activates us. We don't feel calm in red.
Well, right. We don't feel calm. We can feel hangry as well. So it's a motivator and it's a hunger trigger.
Yes.
So, and those are the elements that I'm bringing in when I design, that it is in the details to make something effective. And as much as you're filling space, you have to leave white space, because someone has to be able to process this.
Very true. We need breathing room, don't we? We need breathing room. So, Sarah-Anne, who are the clients that you're best equipped to help, or who do you like working with for your ideal client?
Right. It does really help when they understand the value that they're going to get through marketing when it's done correctly. But some of those industries I've done really well in the construction industry, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
I've also worked with IT people. I think one of the projects that was very interesting for me was he wanted me to design a series of templates, right? Because he was going to do a lot of PR work, but he wanted his staff to be able to fill the templates, which is great. That's fine. But he didn't want to leave any decisions for them. So the
Yeah.
reason the style guide was 35 pages was each template, there were 4 of them, could be used 4 different ways.
Mm.
So I had to illustrate the 4 different ways and do not vary from this because this is our standard method of communicating, building the relationship with our clients, building that comfort level, the know, like, and trust. So that was really fascinating. I really enjoyed that. I feel sometimes PowerPoint gets a bad name.
Mm-hmm.
But as you know, there was a boutique-ish style company that we worked with, and they needed to really put their category of only out there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great because we had that clarity from the get-go, which translated into, I think there were only 8 slides to
Mm-hmm.
convey their message. So crystal clear, quick. And then we just translated some of that into an infographic for reinforcement. So, um, you know, other companies, I started with a logo. I did packaging design, which then led to helping with the look of the website. So the graphics that I had prepared and the additional ones went to the web designer to create it. I've done LinkedIn posts. I'm getting ready to do trade show graphics. So when I get to have my hands in many of their assets, I'm building up that consistency.
Right. And I believe that consistency is the thing that does establish a very credible brand. That brand style guidelines that you were talking about, incredibly important.
Yes.
As you know, I'm thinking the other day, one of my clients came to me and said, we're getting ready to be in a golf tournament and we need to have this
Right.
for some signage. Well, if they just pull something off the website and they distort the logo or they use a different, like, it just dissolves that trust you've built up in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you do a really good job on those as well. But what I hope people can hear now is that the finished design is the visible artifact.
Yes.
But the deeper transformation is helping a business become recognizable, trustworthy, emotionally coherent. You're not just giving somebody something attractive to put into the world.
Right.
You're helping the outside expression of the business become a more truthful representation of what it is inside. So, Sarah-Anne, where can people learn more about you and Saw Design Studio? What would be your contact information? And we're also going to put this in the show notes, but for those of you that are running or walking or driving, we want Sarah-Anne to have a chance to communicate that.
Right. Well, so my website is sawdesignstudio.com. Oddly enough, my email is sawildgoose@sawdesignstudio.com. And of course, if you search for me on LinkedIn, Sarah-Anne Wildgoose, all of that contact information, I have just put it out there in my contact information, and my phone number is there as well. And I would just like to say any relationship is the conversation. And, you never know where a conversation is going to lead. So at least it's good to start with that conversation and then build from there in whichever direction seems appropriate.
Yes. And I can vouch for Sarah-Anne. She is my design go-to for many of my projects. So you can also reach out to me and we can have a conversation as well to find on that. So Sarah-Anne, if someone listening feels personally known but professionally misunderstood, and I think that's kind of where you were.
Yeah.
What would you want them to take away from your story?
That you need to talk to Lisa. Really, no. But I mean, I, you sensed something I didn't. So, okay,
Mm-hmm.
if they don't know you yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
It just expedited the process for me. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure how long I would have been in a challenged mode, right? With lots of questions. So
Mm-hmm.
I think if something seems stale, think about how long have you been in your career, and
Mm-hmm.
when was the last time you reassessed yourself and decided, with all that's gone on in the world,
Yeah.
perhaps it's time to pivot and make some changes.
Right. And I think what is so interesting is now you've been through this. You and I can be sitting in a room and we're hearing a conversation.
Yes.
And you know where I'm going with this,
Yes.
right? All I have to do is look over at you and you're looking at me, and we're both thinking they have that same challenge.
Well, it
But
just, yeah.
many of them don't see it.
Well, right. And I mean, it just happened yesterday because there
Mm-hmm.
were a couple people, and you're hearing the same story again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, well, it's been a block of time since I saw this person, but I'm hearing the same frustrations, which clearly then says they were like me. You're too close to yourself. You can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
You need the objectivity, you need the details, you need the expertise to help unravel all of that. And I am so much happier now. I guess maybe I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't even perceiving that maybe I was unhappy. I just felt stuck.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I think when you're as accomplished as someone as you are and you feel stuck, you feel like I should know what to do, right? Because this is what we do. We work harder, we dig in, we do all of that. But I think the relief did not come from becoming more impressive or creating another service or forcing yourself to work harder. It came from realizing that this history and experience, your discernment, your intelligence, and the depth, it had been there all along, right? You just needed
well,
a way to
right.
recognize that thread.
Well, right. And so I'm someone who's been long in my career, but I could even see someone who's maybe been out for 4 or 5 years, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
and they studied, I don't know, IT. And so they're in the field of IT, but they're just not really enjoying what they're doing. I mean, I could see at that level too, doing an analysis like you do, would point out things that maybe they had never thought about. Oh, I had done that, but I didn't realize I could apply it over here. And I have the skill base, I'm knowledgeable. I just didn't realize I could go over here and let go of that.
Right, right. Yeah, I think so. So I think the fact that an old way of working is no longer working does not automatically mean that something is wrong with you. It
Right.
may mean that the identity, language, or architecture that carried you here cannot carry you to where it comes next, or even what that next is. Like you said, your question was what? Was what? So, Sarah-Anne, I want to really just thank you so much for being willing to return to the honest parts of the story. Again, this was not intended to be a testimonial. It is a true reenactment, we'll say, of the process of being someone very accomplished, and your your breadth of what you're able to offer was being compressed into this little title that people could not understand. But you know, I want to thank you for allowing someone listening to recognize themselves through what you experienced.
Well, I want to say thank you. I've enjoyed our conversation and being here today. So thank you, Lisa.
All right. Okay. Well, and if you're listening and something in Sarah-Anne's story felt familiar, I would generally like to hear from you. Do not send me a polished explanation. Tell me what part stayed with you. Tell me where you recognized yourself. Tell me where you feel fully known, but you're not understood, because that's not a fun place to be. I have been there. Sarah-Anne has been there. This is not uncommon. Or just tell me where the language you've been using can no longer carry the depth of who you've become. You can send me a message on LinkedIn or use the contact information in the show notes. I do read every message. I want to hear from you. Week after week, I speak into the microphone. I love to hear back from listeners. And more often than not, these conversations will lead somewhere meaningful. So if you know someone who has been questioning their value because the old way of expressing it is no longer working, send them this episode. Most people do not need to be told what to do. They need to realize what's already happening inside them. So until next time, remember, your category of only is not something you manufacture to sound different. It's what becomes visible when you finally recognize the unmistakable thread that has been there all along. So thank you for joining me. Thank you again, Sarah-Anne, for being here. And for all of you, I am signing off. Here's to becoming your legendary self. We'll see you here next week.